Look at that, right on time, 9 o'clock, and here we are with the really big show. I'm Jim Check with Now Media. With me, Ian Burns, our managing editor. And we got lots of headlines this morning and lots more to go with it, too. Trump leaves the G7. The UK and the US sign a trade deal. No deal for Canada, though. And Bill C5 facing backlash. And BC Ferry deal heating up. And IH CEO responds to some of the criticism that's being put out there. All that and a lot more. We got a really big show, actually. We've got tons and tons and tons. Beautiful day here in the Okanagan, a little bit cooler, but beautiful sky out there. And in the nation's capital, Mr. Burns?
It's a cloud fest. It's very, very ugly and miserable. And it's also quite humid. So it's like the worst combination.
I thought you said it was a clown fest in Ottawa. There you go.
Politically, that's accurate, yeah. But meteorologically, it's a cloud fest.
There you go, cloud fest in the nation's capital of the three-ring circus. There you go. First of all, Trump left the building, or it's kind of like Elvis left the building kind of thing. Big deal, actually. Trump left the G7, and it's some weird stuff there. I mean, there's a post here that we're going to start off with. From Mike Huckabee, the ambassador, like kind of like, I don't know whether this is trying to tell us like some things that are, like heating up there in Israel, and is the United States about to enter that conflict?
I think the only thing that's heating up is in Mike Huckabee's breeches.
There you
Seems
go.
to be excessively worshipful of Donald Trump. And I was just yesterday, I almost feel bad. Yesterday, I was having a laugh about Mark Carney's orange tongue. But Mike Huckabee, there's no amount of cleaning going to get the orange off his tongue, is there? This has caused me physical pain to read. I cannot believe that there are grown men this pathetic, this spineless, and this eager to get on their knees for somebody like Donald Trump. It's just absolutely repugnant, repulsive to look at. But as for like trying to take it seriously, if that's possible to overcome your gag reflex, I would say, yeah, it does seem that something's building up there, doesn't it? But how can you know with a servile, sycophant slave like that? They would say something like that anyway, wouldn't they? They would say something like that on a normal day because they just want to get the attention of their master.
There's a couple other things that make us believe that perhaps there is something bigger happening. Trump posted on Truth Social, publicity-seeking President Emmanuel Macron of France, and mistakenly said that I left the G7 to go work on a ceasefire between Israel and Iran. And he says, wrong, he has no idea. And it's going to be much bigger than that. Whether purposely or not, Emmanuel gets it wrong. Stay tuned. And then Trump did call for an evacuation of Tehran. And I've seen some videos out there of the city streets mostly abandoned. And I also saw a lot of videos of people leaving the city, the nation's capital there.
Yeah, I mean, that might. The thing is with Trump, it's easy to say, like, that's a stupid thing to say. That's an alarmist thing to say, sort of thing. But then often he says things like this, and then it turns out that he actually meant it. But I mean, God forbid that they're going to try and bloody, blow up Tehran. I think that would be an error from Israel and the US. But you just never know, really, do you?
There's a lot of troop movement as well, and then ships moving towards the Middle East as well. So there's a lot of stuff that kind of supports something happening there too, or maybe it's just a show of force, and to get them to the table.
That's my instinct. But then I also thought that was the case last week when when it came out about the Americans telling their embassy staff to leave in near Iran. I thought that was also, and so did the Iranians, based on what I've read in the New York Times and elsewhere. It seems like the Iranians thought what I thought, which is the obvious thing. It's like, okay, they're just trying to threaten us and push us so that we come to a deal, because the deal was about to expire, or the time limit that Trump had set was about to expire. But it turns out that was all part of Israel's plan to get Iran off its guard. It was like a double bluff almost. Because the Israelis they're operating on another level entirely when it comes to this kind of thing, like the way that they conduct war. They're in a league of their own, basically. So for Trump to say this, who knows? Maybe this is part of another scheme or something. It's like, I think it's almost best not to speculate, because it's like, it's impossible to predict what they're up to.
Well, there is movement, though. You can see if you go look through X, you can see troop movement, American troop movement, and ship movement. So we got some clips here. This the first one here is from CBC. Here, we're going to play this clip here. This is from the G7.
Tariffs. So it's unclear how far-reaching it goes. Rob, on this, like, is Brad right that it's unfair to put too much pressure on this particular summit and this particular date to get everything done just because the G7 is happening, or you know, is there a little bit of a downside to not getting it done here? Because, you know, we saw the steel sector all last week and the week before saying we got to move fast on counter tariffs. You got to do things to protect the industry because people are losing jobs every day. We don't do something about the 50% tariff here.
Yes, I think part of the argument that Canada made to the United States was, look, if you come here and we've got a deal, we can hold it aloft like a trophy, and we can show the rest of the world that we can, the United States can make mutually beneficial deals with its allies, rather than hammering them and pummeling them with hobbling tariffs. That being said, you know, the entire notion of the G7 this year is a very, very modest one. When I asked a couple of other G7 ambassadors what success would look like, it would be if we had a coherent and unified G7 next year. So in other words, we got to get through this. They're an unhappy family squabbling with each other. We have a Canadian Prime Minister who is determined to move away from the United States with resolve and with speed. So I would say that, you know, you look at the agenda. The agenda is energy security, AI, disinformation, global economic outlook. You know, this is not exactly going to provoke Donald Trump. It's
There you go, and that's Rob Russo, the guy that put out that story in The Economist that said that there was a deal happening and that the U.S. would get first right of refusal on Canadian resources. And then this is Holly Doan from Blacklock's, her tweet asking, people briefed on the negotiations say the U.S. would be guaranteed first right of refusal on Canadian resources. That's quite a prize at a time when countries around the world are scrambling to line up for supplies. And then he deleted that article. And did he get bad intel?
It's certainly possible, yeah. The Economist is a very funny, weird magazine that presents itself as all-knowing, but often makes enormous mistakes. So I wouldn't be surprised if that is the case. It could also be the case that this wasn't meant to be published, and that it was certainly not meant to be
shared,
attributed in that way, in the way that they did there. So I don't know, but it's very possible that it was just an error.
And we got another clip here with Mark Carney and Donald J. Trump here.
What is holding up a deal with Canada from your perspective?
It's not so much holding up. I think we have different concepts. I have a tariff concept, and Mark has a different concept, which is something that some people like. But we're going to see if we can get to the bottom of it today. I'm a tariff person. I've always been a tariff. It's simple, it's easy, it's precise, and it just goes very quickly. And I think Mark has a more complex idea, but also very good. So we're going to look at both, and we're going to see what we're going to come out with something.
Yeah, you know, and then definitely there's some other tweets out there, you know, where the Prime Minister, Mark Carney, definitely, you know, like some of the quotes, G7 is nothing well, the U.S. leadership, your personal leadership, leadership of the United States. I've said it before, and I'll say it again. There you go. And then,
I mean, it's cringing, isn't it? It's cringe-inducing. I would say this is an extremely irrelevant and trivial point, but I'm going to say it anyway. Donald Trump, according to official records, his official records, is 6'3". And look at him stood next to Mark Carney there. So if Donald Trump is 6'3", Mark Carney is 6'1". Mark Carney is obviously not 6'1".
Well, if Mark Carney stood up,
why is he lying about his height? It's so strange.
If Mark Carney stood up straight, he might be just as tall.
Maybe he's very servile there, isn't he?
He very Mr. Burns there. If you look at that,
It is Mr. Burns, yeah.
Yeah, there you go. And then one of the big things that was talked about for sure was in that first kind of like meeting there with Carney and Trump there was him calling out Obama and Trudeau directly in front of Mark Carney, saying that it was the worst decision ever and actually was part of the reason for the war in Ukraine. But then we got another clip
here. It's like a power move, isn't it? That's a massive power move because obviously he knows that Mark Carney is on excellent terms with both of those people and praises both of those people. So it's like a finger in his face, isn't it? It's like, you know, you're weak. I'm gonna insult your friends, but you're such a spineless coward that you're gonna sit there and smile. And that's exactly what happened.
And then we're going to play this other clip here when they first sat down around the table, and Mark Carney doesn't single out anybody else, but he does single out the President of the United States.
Nostalgia isn't a strategy. We have to change with the times and to build a better world. And some of you, such as you, Mr. President, have anticipated these massive changes and are taking bold measures to address them. All of us around this table are reinforcing our militaries and security services for the new world. But we all know that there can be no security without economic prosperity and no prosperity without resilience. And in a world where shocks flow across the borders, that resilience comes from cooperation around that starts.
Yeah, and I think I got
elbows literally down.
But that speech reminded me of when I was going through for my CMA that some, you know, like some university student wrote that speech and made sure they put in a lot of good buzzwords. Stuff like that. Just like really said nothing other than really catered to the president and made sure that he felt important in the room.
Yeah, and it seems to me that this has been his plan all along. He says one thing to the Canadian public, and then he says another thing to Donald Trump. It's a bit deceptive, really, isn't it? It's a bit cynical.
Yeah, I think we're not going to play this clip. I think we played it already. But the National Post put out the pundits, voters, and strategists who enabled the Liberals' dishonest campaign must be held to account. And just what you said, elbows way down for Trump as opposed to, you know, tough talk, right? So.
Well, I would say, I mean, yeah, I guess that's right. They did mention voters here, or he did. This is an opinion article, isn't it? But pundits, yeah, okay. But what did you expect? The pundit class in Canada supports the Liberal Party. I mean, if you don't know that, you don't know anything.
Yeah.
And strategists and all, right? Okay, well, they're paid to do that, so obviously. But where the focus should be is the voters, and that's the hardest thing to come to terms with, because it's like, you know, it's like a business, isn't it? The customer's always right. In a democracy, it's like the voter's always right. You can't lash out at the voter. That doesn't make sense. It's like counterproductive. But still, the voters are the people that fell for this. So what do you do? Like, what's the answer? I don't know. Like, I don't think it's enough to just blame the media per se. No. But then you can't like blame the electorate, because then you'd go down a sort of anti-democratic road. But the truth is that the electorate bought this, even though it was obvious from the start that it was a show. But they bought it by and large. It's I
think it was obvious.
A little bit sort of depressing.
I think it was obvious to half the country, but maybe the other half that watched a little bit too much of the national media, maybe not so much. The UK got a deal, though, and we're going to play this clip here with Keir Starmer and Donald Trump.
Okay, thank you very much. We all know the great Prime Minister of the UK, and we just signed a document. This is... Sorry about that.
This is it. A very important document.
Little windy out here. Give me that. We just signed it, and it's done. And so we have our trade agreement with the European Union, and it's a fair deal for both. Going to produce a lot of jobs, a lot of income, and we have many other ones coming. But you see the level of enthusiasm is very good. But the relationship that we have is fantastic. So I just want to congratulate you.
But Donald, thank you very much. This now implements on car tariffs and aerospace, our really important agreement. And so this is a very good day for both of our countries, a real sign of strength. So thank you again, Donald. A really important day for both of us.
Great people, great people.
Has anything changed in the agreement since you spoke on the phone from the Oval Office?
Not much.
Nope.
Not much.
This is implementing.
What is the difference? I don't think it's anywhere near as big of a deal as they're trying to pretend it is, that one.
So
but the British are desperate, so they're trying to make it seem good.
The UK had tariffs on that were 5.1. They're going down to 1.8. And then the US had were 3.4. Now they're going to 10. So it looks like a win for the Americans if you just look at those numbers there that are shown.
Yeah, it sort of protects the British car industry to a certain extent. I think it gives them 100,000 sales.
Yeah,
and it might
for
protect steel, but they still need to figure that out. They're in a state of confusion about steel because it's not been explained clearly what it's about.
And it does say that the U.S.
It is interesting.
The U.S. gets unprecedented access to the U.K. market in ethanol, beef, cereals, fruits, vegetables, animal feed, tobacco, soft drinks. Who doesn't need a soft drink? Shellfish, textiles, chemicals, machinery, and more. So, yeah, what do you think of like that? Again, Keir Starmer definitely showing that Donald J. Trump or the Americans are the boss. Trump didn't look like he was going to bend down and pick up that piece of paper.
Definitely not. And also, I would say, Keir Starmer looking about the same height as Donald Trump there. I've interviewed Keir Starmer, and I was quite a bit taller than him, and I'm not 6'3". So you're not 6'3", Donald. You're a liar.
Well,
I'm going to hunt him down on this.
that's your bone. You're gonna go on that there. It's going to be, and then don't forget, if you ever turn out to be wrong, you're going to have to admit that and apologize. But there you go.
Sure.
I'm going to save just on the camera angle there. Don't forget Keir Starmer standing in front, which obviously makes him look tall. Right?
Perspective.
So
and we don't know if he's got lifts on. He might have lifts in his shoes as well.
You know what I mean? Like so that one definitely. Being a photographer of old, I would say that obviously Keir Starmer is going to look taller in a photo, in a 2D photo for sure. There you go. But Keir Starmer got a deal. Canada, not so much. And here's they're talking about Canada here. So we'll play this clip here.
What is holding up a deal with Canada from your perspective?
It's not so much holding up. I think we have different concepts. I have a tariff concept, and Mark has a different concept, which is something that some people like. But we're going to see if we can get to the bottom of it today. I'm a tariff person. I've always been a tariff. It's simple, it's easy, it's precise, and it just goes very quickly. And I think Mark has a more complex idea, but also very good. So we're going to look at both, and we're going to see what we're going to come out with something, hopefully.
There's an article in the Financial Post, and I've seen quite a bit of things. They say they're going to have a deal within 30 days. So it's going to be tariffs are going to be in there for sure. I would say somehow tariffs.
That's based on a release from the Prime Minister's office. So that came straight from Mark Carney himself, where he said this 30-day thing. The Americans haven't said anything about that, but I think it's right to assume that it's going to have tariffs built in, because the British have, they're celebrating this deal as if it's a good thing, but it's actually much worse than their previous trading arrangement. Yeah. So one would suspect that that's going to be the case, that if their deal is to be reached, it's going to be quite a lot worse than it was previously before the election of Trump. So, and then Carney's going to have to find a way somehow to celebrate this and make it seem like it's a victory of diplomacy or something like that.
It'll be
interesting to see.
Yeah, it'll be interesting also to see if that Economist article by Rob Russo turns out to have any truth to it too. That was recently pulled down as well. So, but one of the things that we introduced last week, I think, is Fool of the Day, and we forgot to do it yesterday. But we're going to do Fool of the Day today at the end, and you can definitely in the comments help us pick the Fool of the Day as we move along, and you can even include us in that if you want. But
we would win it every time if we were included.
And then this is Carolyn Levitt there. posting out saying Trump left at a great day at the G7, even signing a major deal with the United Kingdom. Much was accomplished, and he's off to, he said he wanted to be in the Situation Room there. So like I said, it seems like lots going on, or maybe he had no interest in sticking around for the rest of the G7. That Prime Minister Modi was on the way there, as was President Zelensky on the way there. And there was we can talk about it in a bit here. Yeah, actually, Sikh protests continue in Calgary as Indian Prime Minister Modi arrives for the G7. So Donald Trump not to be there for, again, the third largest economy in the world. Tough to ignore. And it's good for Canada to kind of be, at least having discussions with India again.
But then the thing is, I mean, Mark Carney is being hailed as like bold, almost brave, because it's like he's invited the Indian Prime Minister. Like, oh, that's controversial. Obviously, that's not controversial. He should have been there, and it was immature and ridiculous for the Trudeau government to have this crazy situation with India. But the big point, what would be brave, is if Mark Carney stood up and said to the Sikh separatists in Canada, stop doing this. We're in Canada. Stop provoking India by talking about creating an independent country in India. Don't do that in Canada. It's as simple as that. Stop doing that. It's weird, and it gets us in trouble. It hurts our foreign relations. Yeah, that's what a brave politician would do. But he doesn't do that because he relies on Sikh political activists to get him elected. His party does, and therefore he's spineless.
And then Jagmeet Singh played that up as well, saying that his life is in danger. And then he went to a concert, and then Drake called him out as a goof, called him a goof. And now he's apologized and said, oh, I shouldn't have went there, because I guess he was worried about what Drake says about him, but not so much what anybody else says about him. but yeah, so there you go. I guess we just have to get Drake to be doing the telling Jagmeet to just shut up.
He's the moral authority in Canada, apparently.
There you go. And then Michael Barrett celebrating, because that was his motion. We're going to play a small clip from Michael Barrett on the GC Strategies motion.
Hey folks, just leaving the House of Commons, and this is big news. We had an Opposition Day motion last week that was on notice in my name and seconded by my colleague Kelly McCauley. You'll know him from the Mighty Ogo, where Kelly's the chair. And this motion was about the $64 million in the Arrive scam, which the Auditor General determined was a project where there is, in many cases, no proof that the work that was paid for by taxpayers was done, that security clearances weren't in place where they needed to be in place, and the government initially, the Liberals, voted against having the Auditor General even investigate. So we put this motion on notice.
There you go. We're going to watch this motion go through here. We're going to play this clip here with the motion and then the votes. There you go. We're not going to watch the whole voting process. We're just going to play this first part of this clip here, though. What happened to this? Oh, I think it comes back, though.
Seconded by Mr. McCauley, moved that given that the Auditor General found that Arrive can contractor G... Shall I dispense? I didn't think so. That given that the Auditor General found that Arrive can contracted GC Strategies Inc. was paid $64 million from the Liberal government, and in many cases there was no proof that any work was completed. The House call on the government to A, get taxpayers their money back within 100 days of the adoption of this motion, and B, impose a lifetime contracting ban on GC Strategies Inc., any of its subsidiaries, its founders Christian Firth and Darren Anthony, and any other entities with which those individuals are affiliated.
The 10-minute period for members voting electronically.
There you go. And that motion passed, and the Liberals all voted against. And imagine that. The Liberals voted against that motion, and they're the ones causing the ruckus. Or why would they vote against that motion? It just seems unbelievable. Why would they try to prevent that? And is Christian Firth and the other guy there packing their suitcase and stuffing all that money in there and fleeing the country, or what's going on right now?
They haven't really come out to talk about it, have they? Where are they? What are they up to?
Why would,
I'm sure they deny it. I'm sure they'll claim that it is somehow not their fault or whatever. But
yeah, why would the Liberals not want to do that? They imposed a 7-year kind of like a ban on GC strategies, and didn't even include affiliate companies and the names of them. They were just kind of like, oh yeah, you can probably start up a different company called CG Strategies or something, and still do this type of stuff. That this conservative motion obviously had a lot more teeth to it, and obviously get the money back. I think most Canadians want the money back. And here's the vote. Yeah. We got this. Raquel Dancho put this up there. So there's the vote here: 172 yay and 165 nay. And this again shows you what this Liberal minority may be facing, especially seeing how the NDP don't have official party status, so they don't get to be in any committees. That even makes the Liberals even weaker, even if they can garner support from the NDP, because they don't get any say in the committee stuff. So that gives all the power to the Bloc and to the Conservatives, making it really tough.
Yeah. And I think the Tories so far have actually been playing a really, really clever game. They've been very smart so far, because they've got a couple of victories under their belt already. And they're throwing their weight around, but they're not just being like Poilievre was being during the Trudeau era, where it was just anything the Liberals did or said was just an immediate no. And it was just 100% opposition all of the time. They're not doing that now, because they're actually going to help him pass C5 by the looks of things, while the Bloc and the Greens and all the rest of it rage about it, the NDP, and they're actually going to side with the Liberals to do that. And they've sided with the Liberals on the middle class tax cut, as they keep calling it. So they're actually being smart. They're getting in there with the Liberals from time to time, and by doing so, they alienate the Liberals' natural supporters, like the Green Party and the NDP. But then at other times, they're joining up with those same parties to punish the Liberals on things like this. So, I mean, there's not a lot you can actually really do in opposition. It's kind of it kind of sucks to be in opposition. I often hear politicians cry about how boring and difficult it is, but they're being smart here, and they're getting wins. So whoever's behind this strategy, I think, deserves a nice cookie.
Yeah, I think they're looking at it more as what's good for Canada, as opposed to like what's the political points always, which seems like a better way and it makes them look better as well. Here's Dan Elvis, our local MP here from Kelowna South. And he's talking about David Eby's problem, which we've talked about could be the biggest scandal for the NDP, BC NDP, this year. And I'm going to play this clip here from Dan Elvis.
Mr. Chair, and look, we are facing some trade-offs here. I obviously know that there are some important business that the committee wants to attend to, but I will say that if we do not require the government to immediately tell the province of British Columbia and BC Ferries that they need to start doing shipbuilding here in Canada, whether that be at Seaspan in North Vancouver, or whether it's Davie Shipyards in Quebec, or another shipyard, Mr. Chair. The fact is, right now, the BC government and the BC Ferries are proceeding to purchase ships from the state-owned enterprise. So if we are going to be responsible members of Parliament, we need to give immediately notice to the House of our opinion that this should not go forward. And I would just simply ask that everyone support this common sense amendment, that we support Canadian jobs, whether it be at Irving Shipyards, whether it be at Davie Shipyards, whether it be at Seaspan, and make that statement right now, because the BC government is going to be is being pressured right now to tell BC Ferries to stop this procurement process and to restart it. So if we don't, as members of the Transport Committee, immediately put our foot down and say that this is not tenable, that Canadian jobs should be supported first, Mr. Chair, I'm afraid that simply if we wait till we get to this, maybe in the fall, that option point has passed us by, and we will only have ourselves to blame. So I ask all honourable members to support Canadian jobs, Canadian steel, especially during this time where our steel and aluminum industries are hit so hard. We must stand firm.
There you go. That's Dan Elvis, local MP here. Again, making sense, common sense. And I
mean, that's the thing. It's not like he's trying hard here. It's not like he's had to go and seal himself in a cabin somewhere to think up these excellent ideas. It's just so obvious, isn't it? And he didn't even say what I think is the next most obvious thing, which is that if it's not in Canada, build it with allies. Because Mark Carney released a statement about his bilateral meeting with the Japanese Prime Minister. I think it was the Prime Minister, well, whoever it was, the Japanese representative. And he said about the partnership, he only mentioned a few things. One of the things that was mentioned was shipbuilding. And the Japanese do indeed build ships, as do the South Koreans, like lots of them. Why don't, if it's about capacity, if we can't do it here in Canada, no matter how hard we try, if it's impossible, why would you choose China, our primary enemy in the world? Why would you do such a thing?
And then the other thing, I guess, to add to that, even if you did do it with China, just even like this is how ridiculous it is, why wouldn't you have traded it for the canola deal? Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like nothing, absolutely not. You know, I'm going to bet that Chrystia Freeland's going to eat that her words there with a crunchy bowl of Captain Crunch there later on when she said she couldn't do anything about it.
But you say that, Jim, but they also said that they couldn't do anything about housing and many other things.
Yeah.
And yet, do we just forget that now? They also said immigration was going great. And then one day, Justin Trudeau turned up at a press conference and said that it's bringing wages down, destroying communities, putting too much pressure on housing and health. It's like, oh, okay, so that's just happened then.
Even better, they said that the housing crisis was caused by Airbnb, not by immigration. And then they blamed Airbnb, and which has really hurt tourism in our province here. And speaking of housing, here we have our housing minister facing a little bit of challenge to his integrity over this $2.4 million penthouse. This is a Holly Doan Blacklock story here. Said he would demonstrate integrity, but could not explain why he failed to publicly disclose millions in real estate investments, including a $2.4 million Pacific Coast penthouse. Robertson again declined to discuss his share in BC property access, assessed at $10.85 million. And he said, I will continue to demonstrate integrity as my role as minister. My focus is on getting more affordable housing built across Canada. Yeah.
I mean, it's like, maybe he's already won Fool of the Day there. I'm struggling to think of a competition, because that is just like, that's just dumb. That's just dumb, isn't it? Like, I can't say anything else for that. It's just stupid. Did nobody say to him, was he not vetted? Do you know what I mean? Did nobody say, all right, what are your assets? Like, or I guess maybe because Mark Carney hasn't revealed his, he thought, why should I reveal mine?
Yeah, and then this is, again, we got quite a bit on this. So there's even some backlash from Liberal MPs. Liberal MP Nathaniel Erskine Smith made a comment yesterday while the Prime Minister was out of the Commons. We should improve the bill and respect democratic participation. This is Bill C5, and civil scrutiny of the government's proposed guillotine motion seeks to limit parliamentary debate at an early stage. And we'll play the clip in a bit here, but let's play the clip first from the solar panel Jesus here, Elizabeth May. She's gonna that's a strong contender for Fool of the Day too. Let's play this clip here from Elizabeth.
Quelque chose comme c'est cinq. I've never seen a bill like this, and I've never seen a process to push it through so quickly. You could call it the big, beautiful bulldozer bill.
I know you mentioned earlier that you've never kind of seen anything like this, but is there anything in your years kind of comparatively that you could chalk this up to?
Yes, I was pretty damn shocked when Stephen Harper in spring of 2012 brought in an omnibus bill, Bill C-38, that was 400 pages long and destroyed 70 environmental laws. And it was fast-tracked. This is worse. And in my years observing closely Parliament...
She's a bit of a drama queen, isn't she?
Yeah, I think she goes on.
Someone like that seriously.
I think she goes on to say that Mark Carney is a conservative with a liberal face. So definitely, she chucks some barbs there.
It's a bit weird, isn't it? I would say, sorry, about the previous one that we were just talking about, Erskine Smith. I think the most interesting part of that is that he's saying his argument is about Parliament going into recess for the summer.
Yeah, we're going to play the clip.
Vacation period. We're going to do it. Okay.
Yeah, we'll play his clip first here.
First, we should welcome greater parliamentary and civil society scrutiny. The government's proposed guillotine motion seeks to limit parliamentary debate at every stage of the bill. More concerning, it will jam all expert and public testimony and all committee scrutiny in less than 2 days. For what? Consider that Parliament isn't currently scheduled to sit between June 20th and September 15th. We are rushing legislation through Parliament under the auspices of an urgent threat, but we aren't willing to put Parliament to work for what, an additional week to get things right? The debate on amendments does not need to be rushed. We could easily extend committee hearings by an additional week, provide resources for the committee to sit every day, and engage in a more thoughtful process to hear from experts, improve the bill, and pass it through the House by Canada Day.
I guess the question is, who's doing the applauding there? Was that the Liberals or the Conservatives?
Bloc, maybe, as well. But I would say it's the elephant in the room, that, isn't it? It is an absolute disgrace that they're going to go on a vacation for 3 months after they've worked like 5 minutes this whole year. They haven't worked. Really, what are we paying them for? Why are they being paid? I almost feel like we should dock their wages or something, because this is like extraordinary. It's such bad leadership. It's so irresponsible, and it's such an insult to the Canadian people and to Canada's democracy that they're just going to go on vacation. So I think he's right. I mean, it's a very valid point.
And he's a Liberal MP, and I think one of the things that I noticed in all this is that for the first time in 10 years, I'm kind of like actually mildly like encouraged, because this is a more functioning Parliament than we've seen in 10 years. When we have Liberal MPs speaking out against their own party, where we have the Conservatives winning a motion, the Conservatives acting like in the best interest of Canada instead of making political points. And it'll be interesting to see how Bill C5 plays out. And does Bill C5 get passed? Does it get passed? One. And will it approve a pipeline? And then will he actually be seen as a Conservative versus a Liberal? Lots of things to play out in this Bill C5. But like I said, I am encouraged that the Conservatives got to pass a motion, and they didn't do it with just political rhetoric. And then also there's a Liberal MP actually standing up against, because that's a lot of power to give two people, really. Well, one person, like Carney and the Environment Minister Hodgson, right?
Mm. But I think there are other positive signs as well. I mean, it depends what angle you're looking at this from, but you could see it as positive that the NDP has separated itself from the Liberals as well.
Yeah.
And the Bloc is also, well, the Bloc just never plays along, really, does it? But the Bloc is, they're in the midst, making chaos, as it likes to do. But it means that it's going to be very difficult for Mark Carney to govern in an imperious way. And I feel like Justin Trudeau, he didn't have a majority after 2019, but he kind of still governed as if he did have a majority, because the NDP was so loyal to him.
Yeah.
He had them like guaranteed, really.
And he had really a spineless Liberal cabinet as well. They came out after and said they disagreed, but they didn't dare disagree with him publicly or when it came time to vote. But they were literally spineless when they were dealing with Justin Trudeau.
But I would say some of this lot are also pretty spineless, since they voted away their right to review his or to get rid of him, to review his leadership and get rid of him. Just so bizarre, such a weird thing to do, such a slave mentality. But I would say, nonetheless, all of these ingredients suggest to me that this government, I don't think it's going to last the whole term. I think there's a very realistic prospect that it's going to be sunk at some point, and then there'll be another election. But I mean, if you're on the Mark Carney side of things, you might even welcome that, because it might be possible that he would win a majority in another election. But it does seem like this Parliament isn't built to last, I don't think.
And then this is from a Toronto Star reporter saying that Mark Carney's Bill C5 is just a naked power grab that tramples our democracy, and that's just an opinion piece by Althea Raj. And then Holly Doan.
And that's in the Toronto Star, a very left-wing newspaper, so that's interesting.
And then Holly Doan, opposition MPs signaled difficult days for cabinet and pushing bills through committee. Committee calls on the Minister of Finance to table a budget before Parliament closes summer. This is where they're weak. This is where the Liberals are very, very weak in committee, because they don't have the NDP. NDP can't sit in committee because they're not official party status, and neither can Elizabeth May, the party of one. Elizabeth May is, like, she's getting as much mic time as Jagmeet Singh used to get. And I think that the Jesus thing is not going to actually help her much.
I don't think it's going to help her much to when she does this charade of pretending to be drunk. I'm sure she's pretending, but I don't know if that's going to do her any favors either.
But again, a committee is where they're weak. Committee is where they're weak, because it's the Bloc and the Conservatives, which have seen eye to eye on more things than the Liberals in the Bloc. So there you go. Interesting.
But it's also this crazy deadline. It's like 20th of June, isn't it? That's the end. Like, that's craziness. Yeah. And he's promised all sorts of things. He's promised free trade in Canada between provinces by Canada Day.
That isn't happening.
That's just around the corner. Like, there's a lot of potential embarrassment here. And the most embarrassing thing that could happen is if he didn't get this through, and then they all went on their little vacation. Because then what would he do? Because he's lost so much political capital by refusing to extend Parliament. Would he then just kind of say, oh, okay, well, actually, I was wrong. We're all coming back anyway?
I think they should extend Parliament. And we got some stuff from Scott Moe in Quebec here later on here, though. But this violent group in Ontario there, violent crime group linked to extortion attempts, dozens of staged collisions, where they basically insurance fraud, all kinds of things, 18 tow trucks, and 4 personal attacks of total value, 5 stolen vehicles, just lots of firearms, ammunition, bulletproof vests. Like, what is going on in Ontario? Doug?
Well, that Rupa, whatever her name is, I can't remember her name, she writes for the National Post.
Yeah.
Yeah. She's from India, isn't she, I believe?
Yeah, she calls it out quite a bit.
Yeah, she came out and what she said is quite interesting. She's like, she just pointed out the obvious, which is that all these men are either Indian or of Indian origin, except maybe that woman, I guess, but all of the men seem to be. And she just said, like, these criminals and these criminal gangs are, like, really having a horrible effect on the reputation of Indians in Canada, like herself, obviously. She's like, conscious of that. But that's quite an interesting idea, because we do hear a lot about that, the gangs, particularly in Ontario and the GTA, like, it's such a horrible thing to say, but they're often like ethnic gangs. They're based along ethnic lines. And actually the same is true of Vancouver, where, they're kind of like the mafia, but other ethnicities. What do you do about such a thing? I don't know, but it is the truth.
And then some of the stuff that's going on with some of these unions, we've seen some of the stuff that they supported in the past, but here's CUPE, Ontario, coming out as a sponsor for a Toronto protests on hands off Iran. And, so a lot of people calling into question what the union is doing in all of these political movements, as opposed to fighting for the rights of their workers.
I mean, how long have they been embarrassing themselves with this kind of thing now? They're just, so many of these unions are just like, they're just rotten all the way through. There's nothing left.
And then this is just a clip here, and I'm not sure, I didn't verify it, but I know that it's marginally true. And they're just going to play this little clip here to show you the strength of the U.S. military. This, I think, is in the wrong place, but yeah, maybe we'll just leave it. We'll leave it. I just want to verify this. Well, maybe we'll put it in tomorrow. We won't put it in today. But rain and cooler temperatures provide relief in prairie wildfires, and more evacuees get to go home in fire-ravaged Manitoba and Saskatchewan. So the cooler temperatures, obviously, that's what always helps with wildfires, and a lot of people are getting to go home. And then even the alerts are lifted as favorable weather helps in the BC wildfire fight as well. And then I did an interview with the Transport Canada with Firestorm, the CEO of Firestorm. I did an interview with him, and this could be an absolute game changer for fighting wildfires when you can use these drones. These are not autonomous yet. They're remote controlled, the UAVs. But you can go watch that interview. We're going to play a small clip of this Alex Desjardins of the CEO of Firestorm. I'm going to play a small clip here, about a minute long, that shows you how their technology works. Any volume there? Anyway, these drones are deployed in vehicles out to the wildfire area, and then they are basically like helicopters, but they're unmanned, and then so they can operate all night long, like 24/7 they can operate, and you can have several of them attacking a fire, similar to a helicopter carrying the bucket, the water bucket, and that's the main thing with these things. And they are not autonomous. They are operated by a remote operator, but they can fly at night, and they can attack fires. And they've got approval from Transport Canada to start using them. And
I feel like that would be very straightforward to automate them as well, which would be the real game changer, wouldn't it? Because then you could just unleash them.
Yeah, that's the idea. That is what they're working on. That's the AI component of it. And they are not electric. They are jet engine propulsion, and they got about a 2-hour flight time. I'd advise people to go listen to it. It's a very good interview. Alex shared a lot of really good information, and I do believe, living here in wildfire country in the Okanagan here, that this literally could be the game changer. We had a Level Up AI conference here last year in September, and we had a company also there that is dealing with this stuff. And these guys are in. Peter Diamandis was our keynote speaker there from X Prize, and this is the only Canadian company in the X Prize wildfire competition. So you can go watch. There's a criteria that they have to meet and how fast they can access a fire and how they can, action a fire. And initial attack is also important in a wildfire. And I work for AFS. You either got to put it out early, or then you just got to figure out how to, build guards, because it's hard to put out a fire that is raging. The weather's got to cooperate. A whole bunch of things have to happen. But again, if wildfires are a concern for you, I'd go watch this interview, because this could be an absolute game changer. And that's what our headline is Transport Canada authorizing BC startups wildfire fighting drones. And these guys are based on the island as well. So I'd advise you to go watch it. Bill C-18. And here's an interesting twist, and we're going to cover this all the time. Bill C-18 still exists here, according to Stephen Guilbeault, the cabinet minister there, says it's immoral to question Bill C-18. Well, the public is definitely questioning it as well. And this is CTV News did this thing here. U.S. news consumers are turning to podcaster Joe Rogan and away from traditional news sources, the report shows. And they're turning to people like, Joe Rogan, Megyn Kelly, Candace Owen, Ben Shapiro. And this is worrying some of these news outlets. And they say that these people are spreading misinformation and disinformation. And despite their popularity, online influencer personas seem to be the biggest sources of false and misleading information. I think CTV and CBC should watch some of their own stuff and put some labels on it. But
it's a study by Reuters as well. I mean, Reuters is a cut above CTV. Reuters actually sometimes try to do journalism, unlike CTV, but they still make loads of mistakes, and they still put out loads of what you have to call misinformation, and aren't very apologetic about it. Whereas at least the thing is, I think people like Joe Rogan and respect Joe Rogan, and people like him because when he makes a mistake, which he does all the time, he's actually quite open about it. Yeah, he says like, "Oh no, sorry, I was wrong," and he does things like, it's kind of stupid, and it's like, it seems a bit amateurish, but he asks like Jamie, asks his little friend there to just go on the internet. And it's like, at least the thing is, Joe Rogan doesn't present himself as omniscient, whereas Reuters does. And it's not. Like, neither Joe Rogan nor Reuters is omniscient, but only one of those entities admits that fact.
Yeah, Joe Rogan, and then we'll always go, and they'll ask those questions, and but just like you said Donald Trump isn't 6'3", but I asked our friends while we're going here, and ChatGPT says he's 6'3", but And 215.
No, I know he does. I know he does say that because it's in his medical records every year when they publish it, and I always see it whenever I read that. I always see the 6'3" thing and just laugh at it because it's obviously not true.
Well, when we get our credentials to go in the White House there for all that new media, you can go stand up next to him and see if you can get that measurement. But
Well,
CNBC.
I think one of the reasons that it's theorized is because obesity, whether or not you're obese, is based on your BMI, isn't it? And that is your height and weight relative to each other. So if he's 4 inches or whatever on that document, he's 4 inches taller than he actually is in reality, then that gives him a lot more room to be fat and not be officially obese. And that's one of the sort of theories that would make sense to me, obviously, because nobody wants to be laughed at for their weight, do they?
CNBC also reporting that streaming, for the first time ever, has outpaced the combined share of broadcast and cable TV viewing. That's according to a new Nielsen report. Streaming growth has been driven by 3 main factors: free ad-supported channels, the rise of YouTube, and shifts within legacy media companies to reach streaming-centric consumers. And then in May, YouTube represented 12.5% of all television viewing, the highest share of any streamer to date, in the 4th consecutive monthly of share increase. So that's why we're here on YouTube as well. Streaming has outpaced the combined share of broadcast and cable TV viewing for the, So there you go.
But that includes, I assume, productions from cable TV shows. Like a lot of people go on YouTube to watch CNN or whatever, or Fox News, don't they?
Yeah.
For convenience. So that's a hard one to disentangle.
The mainstream media is losing audience like crazy. I mean, that's where you've seen some stations like MSNBC cutting hosts too, right? Like we've seen people drop. We saw ABC dropping people as well. And people are definitely losing faith in mainstream media. And again, if we look at here in Canada, we don't have any kind of alternative sources on the national media thing. We have Bill C-18 that is crippling and hobbling news outlets like ourselves. The Online News Act, Bill C-18, which Stephen Guilbeault said yesterday is immoral to question. I guess we're just immoral then, because we question it, along with Andrew Lawton, the MP, questioning it, as many other Conservative MPs have questioned it, as well as many outlets have questioned it, including CTV has said that they had to lay off 4,800 employees because of Bill C-18. All immoral. I wonder how the laid off employees feel. Even Guilbeault. There you go.
But it's also C-11, isn't it? Is very relevant to what you're talking about there. The Online Streaming Act, because that's about trying to apply the same, retrogressive, backward regulations to YouTube and Twitter and Facebook and all the rest of it. The same ones to those that are already applied to the very stagnant, boring and useless TV scene in Canada.
And you can see the bias in why legacy media and these news outlets and politicians are really fighting hard against losing their hold over the public, and saying that they're discrediting the other voices out in the market. I mean, you've lost them for what? Some of the stuff you've done. Like you lose the public trust every time you lie to them. And mainstream media has done a really poor job of being honest with the public.
Indeed. And the government protects it. And that's to the discredit of the government as well as those media outlets.
And that's a quid pro quo, because the media protects the government, which is why the people have lost trust in the media.
Yeah. And that's why they'd rather watch Joe Rogan, and why we don't have a Canadian equivalent.
And us.
Yeah.
Because we don't get any money from the government. They won't give us any money, so we don't have to toe their line. And then Calgary Police putting out, this is similar to that Toronto warning. Calgary Police putting out this warning of a trend of overnight break-ins where people looking to steal cars. Again, maybe we need to put some more surveillance or tracking or inspection on these C-cans that leave with all these vehicles that go to South African countries, or African countries, I shouldn't say South Africa, with stolen vehicles. And because it seems like there's such a money-making deal going on by stealing people's cars that they're breaking into homes to get the keys. The Toronto police, it was last year, they said just to leave the keys at the door. so that people would only steal the keys. Why not just leave them running in your driveway? I guess you would get a bylaw infringement for leaving your car running, right?
It's crackers, and then you can't even defend yourself. You can't defend your property, as we saw in that story the other day. That to me, I think that would be perhaps one of the more important changes. Because you wouldn't want to pull off something like this in Florida, would you? Because you would get your head blown off.
Yeah, what would Governor DeSantis say about opening the door and telling you to leave the keys at the front door so that somebody could come in and steal your stuff? Not very friendly, that's for sure. There's a letter here from the Building and Trades of Alberta supporting a pipeline. And this is Nathaniel Smith saying that 60,000 Canadian jobs, count on it. Alberta's in. How about Team Canada? And then she's calling out Mark Carney there, saying the federal government and the Prime Minister have the opportunity to show generational leadership and make Canada an economic powerhouse right now. And so she'd be pushing for it. She seems like, I've listened to a couple of her interviews, she seems very hopeful that something will get done, which is good, good on her to be, like being hopeful anyway, until, there's proof otherwise.
Yeah, I guess it's important to be optimistic, isn't it? Especially when you're trying to do a deal with various parties. But whether or not she's wise to do that, I couldn't say. Or whether or not, she's going to be vindicated with that optimism, I don't know.
Well, we talked about it earlier. Scott Moe says he's done with kissing Quebec's butt for a pipeline. So, and there you go. Scott Moe being honest.
The change is not going to come from inside Quebec, obviously. It would have to come from the federal government.
That's right.
And the federal government now is controlled by the Liberal Party, which exists to give certain privileges to Quebec. So they're not going to do it either.
There's going to be a loser in this somehow. If Bill C-5 is put forward and it provides for a pipeline for Alberta, the Liberals in the Quebec are going to lose their mind, and the BC NDP are going to lose their minds. And if it doesn't put it through, then Alberta and Saskatchewan are probably going to continue on their path. And be interesting to see.
I think it's been underplayed by the political class just how serious this is. I think they're really trying to avoid talking about how serious it is because, as you've just outlined there, it's the stakes could be higher, really, could they?
Bill C-5 is definitely, I think, the line in the sand and see what happens with it, right?
And then there's First Nations as well, which we didn't even mention them, but that's also another kind of part of the coalition breaking apart.
And the master fundraiser, Ezra Levant there, he says the Calgary police blocked him and he sued the Liberal cabinet ministers who blocked him in court and had to pay him costs. So he's asking, the Rebel News loves a good lawsuit, right? I think that's all they do is lawsuits. No, we shouldn't say that. They probably sue us.
Why do the little social media people at like the Calgary Police Service? Why are they taking it? Yeah, why are they taking that on themselves, giving themselves that responsibility? Because the people that are in control of social media accounts aren't usually very senior people. They're usually just kids. Why are they doing that? Like, it's so ridiculous.
So they can say they did it at the pub, I guess, or something. And then just on this No Kings rally, we have this before we head into BC News. We just have the Stephen A. Smith dumps on this No Kings rally. And I've said the same thing in the past. Like, if he was truly acting like a king, then why would he allow the courts to nullify some of his decisions? But here's a little rant from Stephen A. Smith, a liberal, self-proclaimed liberal.
Yeah, people talk about no kings, no kings. He's not a dictator. This is not an authoritarian regime. But that's why he's trying to make it like, well, really? That's why the state's suing him. That's why he's losing some of these cases in court. Last time I checked, you're in a position of power. You try to get your way. Somebody sues you. They fend you off by going through our court system. The court system makes a ruling. And as a result, it shows that our system works. What is Trump doing differently than what he campaigned on? You may not like it. That's why you win the election, so he's not in a position to do it. As opposed to focusing on stuff that ain't going to win an election.
There you go, Stephen A. Smith, lover of the rant. But it makes sense. And I've said this too, if he was really a king, why would he even bother the courts? He's like, I don't care what the courts say, just do whatever he wanted. And then
it's a completely feeble campaign, isn't it? And I think there's a reason that it hasn't it hasn't been taken up in any sort of popular way, has it? It's a very obscure little weird thing.
It just makes no sense.
People are doing.
Absolutely no sense. And the meme yesterday was great when, like that meme that was put out for Trump and says, like, thank you to all those people that are trying to make sure there's no kings in the United States and that preserved my presidency. Their arguments are so bloody weak that it's just bloody silly. Let's head into BC and local news here quick before we get into the other stuff, like the meme stuff. We got tons of it today. BC Ferries quietly signed off this multi-billion-dollar deal with the Chinese state. And we got a little clip here. We're going to play it first here.
He said this on the floor of the legislature. What did he really mean?
We will always be the true north, strong and free with our elbows up, Honorable Speaker.
Well, elbows up certainly doesn't mean standing up for BC, since we just learned David Eby has completely betrayed workers in British Columbia. The NDP are giving a multi-billion-dollar ferry building contract to a Chinese state-owned company. That's right, BC Ferries are getting 4 new ships, not made in Canada by Canadian workers with Canadian steel, but by the communist government in China. Instead of creating new jobs in BC, David Eby is creating jobs overseas, in a country responsible for the flow of fentanyl precursors into the port of Vancouver. Is that really who should be getting a multi-billion-dollar taxpayer-funded contract? The Conservative Party of BC is calling for this deal.
There you go. You can go watch that full clip on X too. But it's the Conservative Party of BC and the unions. And this is this next post here. The unions, Eby betrayed workers. Now unions are turning on him as well. And there is definitely a lot of people. And there's an open letter to BC Ferries, and this is from a union as well. Deeply disappointed to learn that BC Ferries selected China Merchants Industry Warehouse Shipyards to build 4 new major vessels. Canadian jobs shall always come first. This is just one of the many voices joining in on this, right? The decision in this moment in Canadian history will be forever a stain on BC Ferries. We stand ready to provide local workforce to build components of these ferries in BC. We reached out and we're going to see if we can get an interview, but we'll see. I just don't think this is going to go away. The Conservatives are definitely on this as well. Like lots of different things. And I did interview Kelowna MLA, Christina Lowen, I think Kelowna Centre MLA. We talked about the health system reform, but we also talked about the BC Ferries as well. And she said that needs to happen too. But I'd advise you to go watch that interview because she's supporting Gavin Dew's call for the resignation of Susan Brown as well, the CEO of Interior Health, and says that there is a need for immediate action, accountability, and fresh leadership to restore trust and functionality in the region's healthcare system. I did that interview yesterday with Christina Lowen. You can go watch it. It's about 30 minutes. That's her first long-form interview that she's ever done, too.
Yeah, which is quite amazing, really, isn't it?
Yeah, so we got her first. We had the first long-form. She's done a few small hits. She was, we've asked several times. We finally got it, and she's made a promise that she's going to come in more often. She just wanted to get her feet under her, and thought she did really well in the interview. I'd advise you to go watch it. We've also reached out to Interior Health and asked Susan Brown to come in and do a long-form interview. We've asked for 30 minutes with Susan Brown. She did put out an op-ed yesterday that we did run on Kelowna Now. The op-ed is on Kelowna Now right now. And she's basically saying that she acknowledges that IH is facing significant pressures. There's growing demand for healthcare services here at IH and across the province. We know that with immigration, there's been an influx of that. And Kelowna is the largest center outside the Lower Mainland. And it was also like, this is a regional center for everybody that, comes into this hospital is a big deal in this hospital. But she does also say that she continues to hear sensationalized misinformation in the media and beyond. But she wants the community to know that KGHN continues to be a priority for me and IH. And she says that she does have the support of the chair of Interior Health Board, Dr. Robert Halpenny, and also the support of the Josie Osborne, the Minister of Health.
Sensationalized misinformation. That's a new one to my ears.
Is that us or who's that?
I don't know.
Because we've done quite a bit on this. Like we've done quite a bit because a lot of her reaction was that first interview I did with Gavin Dew. I mean, if we go back and we track back this, there was that TikTok that was put out by that young female doctor, and talking about the crisis in pediatric. Well, actually, before that even, Renee Merrifield on this show when we do Beyond the Ballot said that she had heard lots of rumblings. So she used to sit on the board with IH and said she heard lots of rumblings on the crisis in interior health with the pediatric. And then that young doctor did it. Then there was a letter from 7 doctors that supported her. And then I think right after that, another 130 professional healthcare people supported the 7 doctors. And then, this thing has kind of escalated. I don't know if it's being sensationalized. It's just it's festered so much that the pot just blew off. The lid just blew off the pot.
I think the pediatric ward situation as well, that gave a lot of people something like tangible to point at, didn't it? And then started to get louder.
Yeah. And then there is coming to Kelowna here 4 major events, and supposedly going to bring about $50 million into the city. One of those events is the Memorial Cup. And then people are talking about this. And again, this is from the Conservative MLA, Harman Bango. He likes to do the social media. And he said thousands of vacation rentals are being wiped off the map, not by the market, but by NDP management. Tourism towns are panicking, jobs at risk. This isn't housing policy, that's economic sabotage. And he says, hit pause before the damage becomes irreversible. And we're going to play this clip here.
Hi, I'm Rosalind Bird, MLA for Prince George Valemount. Across British Columbia, thousands of vacation bookings are being cancelled. Weddings, family reunions, long-awaited getaways, vanishing overnight because the BC NDP government failed to deliver a basic registration system. Let's be clear, this isn't just about short-term rental owners. This is about small-town economics. It's about families who can't afford a $500 a night hotel room. And it's about local businesses, restaurants, shops, tour guides, losing a summer's worth of income. I've spoken with an operator in our community who did everything right, fully registered, fully booked, and then, without warning, Booking.com canceled every single reservation because of issues with the provincial system. No helpline, no grace period, just gone. How does that help anyone? All this government has done is punish responsible people trying to follow the rules while crippling our tourism economy in the process. British Columbians want housing solutions, but not like this. Not by wiping out the very people and businesses that make our communities vibrant and affordable. The Premier and his housing minister must press pause, fix the system, and stop the chaos before even more damage is done. This isn't governing, it's reckless, and British Columbians deserve better.
I was in attendance at the Kelowna Chamber event where Brenda Bailey spoke, the finance minister, and they definitely, they don't know how to say they were wrong. Like this Airbnb policy, they don't know how to say they're wrong. Like the Liberals don't know how to say they're wrong. Bill C-18, Bill C-69, Bill C-48. They just don't know how to admit they're wrong. And it's hurting many British Columbians and many small tourism towns, including Kelowna, that many
people... Keep reading about Tofino, which you could easily see that being catastrophic in a place like Tofino.
And here we have 4 major events coming to Kelowna, and we still have these restrictions in place. And they talk about hotels. I think Brenda Bailey said in that thing when I think the question was asked from 4 different people. It was all about Airbnbs because a lot of people bought investment properties here. And like I said, the cranes are coming down. They're not going back up, and they can't even sell what they have. And a lot of people asked questions on the Airbnb policy, and she said there's no room to change it. And it's hurt tourism here in this area. And they just don't know how to say they were wrong. And she cites that one example of the one person that had 120 units. I interviewed the head of Airbnb Canada, and he said 90% of the people own one Airbnb. It's not like it's a rampant thing where they cite that example, saying that one person had 120 units. Yeah, there's always exceptions, but you can't govern on the exception, can you?
It's not very responsible. I would. I would submit.
lazy government, and just you're finding something to support your case, right? And they also relied on the study that was funded by the BC Hotel Association, and she said there'll be plenty of hotel rooms soon because in BC there's 36 new hotels being built. And again, so is this NDP used to represent the people? This sounds like it's the NDP is representing corporations, not the people. And then the unions are walking away from the NDP as well. So obviously they're doing something.
But interestingly, the chap that's in charge of all this, the housing minister, Ravi Kahlon, however you pronounce that, he, according to the gossip of the last few days anyway, he's gunning for David Eby's job, and he wants to be the next boss man. So that'll be an interesting one, wouldn't it, if he was to be the new king of BC?
We kind of flew through that because David Eby, again, is a Liberal there because he had the elbows up as well. And that was in his speech there, right? True North Canada with elbows up. Well, yeah. This is a weird story. You put it in 5 things and we just have it here. A family challenges 84-year-old BC woman's will after she gives $1 million left to a male escort. It reminds me of that. I don't know if you watched the old Superman movie where the old spinstress leaves all the money to Lex Luthor.
Is that the one with Gene Hackman?
Yeah, it's Gene Hackman. Yeah, so he gets all the money, and then the dogs, I think, ate the old lady. I think. Yeah.
I mean, it's just one of those. I think it's right that you immediately went to a fictional analogy because it reads like fiction. It's like a story, isn't it? And sometimes the news gives us these stories that just seem like they're imaginary, but it's real.
Someone was watching a little bit too much of the old Superman. And let's move on to markets. So we're getting close to the end here, but we got all those memes, and it's worth sticking around for. And also, you got to help us vote on the Fool of the Day. I think David Eby's definitely in contention so far today with his elbows up comment there. Silver's on the move. Silver continues to move up. Silver is over $37 right now. So silver moving. Like just fell underneath it right now. It was over 37. I think it's 36.99 right now. Silver showing strong momentum though, driven by industrial demand, bullish sentiment, and obviously it's the poor man's gold. So a lot of people jump into silver. It's definitely something a market can move a lot easier than the gold market, right? So, and then the stock market again, fairly muted as that Iran Israel war kind of heats up, but the market's not really paying much attention to it. The markets are fairly muted as well, and gold is muted as well. Not much doing anything. If something was chaotic happening there, gold would shoot high, like.
Well, Trump in the last half an hour, Trump has just said in capital letters that he wants an unconditional surrender. So I don't know what that's going to do to the markets. I don't think that's going to have much of an effect really, because it would be like actual what they call kinetic action, wouldn't it? It'd be like actual bombs going off.
You need to see stuff happening. And again, the markets are saying they don't believe anything's going to happen right now. And then so gold is fairly muted as well, just kind of hanging in there. And the same goes for Bitcoin. Everything is kind of like in this limbo area. And the Canadian dollar. All the currencies off against the USD. I guess, there is some faith put into the US dollar there. They're signing deals. He promised deals, and there's deals being signed. The UK, one of the deals that was signed, and definitely Keir Starmer, that'll go a long way. I know that the UK needs some help as well. They need some deals, right?
Desperate.
There you go. And then, and oil is relatively not much going on there too, right? So, and then as we move into our transportation section here, Elon Musk just nuked every AI company. It says he spent $1 billion on the Titan supercomputer. And that's one of the things that is slowing down OpenAI and Google, and it's just access to compute power, right? So Elon Musk did build that Colossus there thing. And then in more news, X, to me, I find X to be like the best place to go for news if you're looking for news, world news and that too. Because going to some of the websites, like I used to go to CNN and Fox and all that stuff and Financial Post, I can get it all more condensed and quicker on X. And now X is the #1 news source in the UK, and it's been that way for in many countries. It's now the #1 news source. So
I'm not surprised. I mean, it drives the news agenda in Britain. I don't know if you've seen, but they've just finally announced I'm sure you can remember a few months ago when Elon Musk was going on about the Pakistani rape gangs in England. He kind of hammered that day after day after day, because the argument then was there should be a national inquiry, like a national investigation into how this all happened. And the Labour government kept saying, no, no chance. He kept pushing it. It was called a far right narrative and all kinds of things. And a couple of days ago, they announced, or might even have been yesterday, they announced, sure enough, they're going to do a national inquiry. And it's being credited to X, basically, and in part to Elon Musk. So, I mean, that's an amazing power that he has. It's kind of frightening, actually, isn't it, when you think about it?
So depending on where you stand on this, some people say X saved the world from being censored, and by him buying X. And then the people on the far left would say that X is like a cesspool of misinformation, and they all went to Blue Sky. It turns out Blue Sky is not doing very well, and most of the people that left for Blue Sky are coming back, because over at Blue Sky, there's just a bunch of people they got nobody to scream at over there. They just scream at themselves.
Themselves. But I mean, X has changed, and the algorithm has changed, I've noticed, quite dramatically in recent weeks, where I'm seeing a lot more balance, a lot more like differing opinions, which is always good.
And I left X, and I had a very active account. I made it on this top list of CPAs, and I closed my account. I even had I can't remember her name now. Paris Hilton. Paris Hilton followed me on X there, because I thought that's what you were going to say. I trashed her once on Bitcoin when she was promoting Bitcoin, when I didn't believe in the Bitcoin. And she followed me, and then I had quite a following. And then I deleted it because it was just a cesspool of nonsense, and I deleted my account. And then when Elon Musk bought it, I started a new account. So I have a relatively new account. So you can find me on X there if you're so inclined.
It was the primary medium for the what's called the woke movement, whatever you want to call that, the sort of hyper-liberal movement of the early 2020s or whatever, and late 2010s. It was fundamental to that, and Elon realized that, obviously, didn't he? Because he's got a few healthy synapses, that chap. He figured that out, and so he just bought it. And I don't think it's a coincidence that since he bought that, the sort of hyper-liberal woke movement or whatever has diminished in power, considerably. I think its power was linked very much with Twitter.
Yeah, and then many people say that he saved democracy in the world on the right, and then obviously on the left, he is the evil villain. So there you go. Make that what you want of that.
He's a Nazi, isn't he, according to some people?
I find myself using X more and more. I used to go to LinkedIn a lot, but if you're looking for financial information as well, I mean, X is the place to go. There's so many good minds on X right now, and YouTube I use a lot as well.
Yeah.
But YouTube is slow. Like, X is immediate. Like, if something's happening in Tehran right now, you're going to find it on X. And you're not going to find it on YouTube for 2 days later, right? 2 days later, you'll find it on YouTube, right? But
it was obvious that even during the Syrian civil war, back when it was just called Twitter, it was obvious that the people who were on Twitter knew more about the Syrian civil war than people reading the New York Times, for example, because there was just so much more content,
More than the people working at the New York Times, likely to.
That's for sure.
There you go. This is another post here from Sawyer Merritt. Really good guy if you're looking for information on Tesla. This is number of accidents per million miles, and you've experienced full self-drive, and here it is, Tesla at 0.15 per million miles, and then Waymo at 1.16, and then just the average driver that's eating their sandwich or whatever, like texting or something like that. A lot more accidents per million miles. And here's a big deal. OpenAI secures a $200 million U.S. defense contract. So there you go, OpenAI. I listened to a really good video this morning on YouTube. That's what I do instead of watching television. I watched video. One of the what do you call it? One of the big minds in AI said that one of the things they're definitely not regulating in the world, or even going to consider regulating, is AI in defense. And there you go. So there's OpenAI getting some money from the U.S. defense contractor. And when we talk about automobiles in this automobile sector that the liberals are trying to protect, Here's Shannon Stubbs, the Conservatives, they say they're going to put forward a motion to scrap the EV mandate, because the Liberals themselves aren't going to do it, but they probably won't get help from the Bloc on this, or maybe they will. But they do have a motion to repeal the gas-powered vehicle ban in Canada, which, again, if they don't scrap that, there won't be an automobile sector to protect in Canada.
She's making it seem like it's going to be illegal to drive a gas car, but that's not quite it, is it? It's about buying them.
Yeah, it's going to be a
$20,000 as well.
It's going to be a $20,000 hit to the automobile companies if they produce more than they're allowed to in their quotas, right? That's the thing.
And
right?
also, there are always going to be people that are going to want a gas car, so that would mean the used market would go a bit crackers, wouldn't it?
GM, you can see that they're investing in gas engines still. They've unveiled their quickest Corvette ever, a ZRX hypercar, going to 0-60 in less than... I don't know if that hypercar has an electric motor in it as well, though. But I know that Formula One is now putting electric motors in there, or they're increasing the amount of kilowatt hours they can have in their electric motors. In Formula One, I just watched the thing on that. You can now have, I think it's like 350 kilowatts. So there you go. Here we are. Are you serious? And then we're gonna pick our fool of the day. And here's a little clip here from Giorgio Meloni. I asked. You've seen this. I'm sure you've seen this. Emmanuel Macron whispers something in her ear, and this is like, when you're asking somebody out, when you're a youngster asking somebody out for a date, and they roll their eyes at you, that's probably not going to be a good sign. Right?
I feel like she's rolling her eyes in reaction to what he said. Like Macron said, "Look at Keir Starmer, what a nerd he is," and then she's going, "Mamma mia."
Mamma mia. But anyway, people will say, oh, this is not even news. Why are you playing that? And then, lo and behold, there's CTV. CTV. Melania rolls her eyes in an off-mic moment with Macron.
She's just a very expressive person. I mean, she does. There's a story like this every time she makes a public appearance, isn't there? Because it's just who she is. You think people would get used to it by now.
She's made herself very well known on the world stage. You think about it, how many world leaders do you know? And Giorgia Meloni, like, how many Italian presidents can you name from the past?
Quite a few, but then I'm a bit of a sad axe in that regard. But in terms of the average person, I would say
most people wouldn't know. You know what I mean? They couldn't name very many people. But Giorgia Meloni is like, she's like made a name for herself, and
she's she's fiery and she's interesting, and she actually has lived a life. If you read about her sort of biography, she had a kid when she was really young, and I think she was divorced or broke up with her boyfriend or something. She's had a pretty complicated life.
And she's also
she's the prime minister.
She's also got I said president. She's the prime minister. She's also got the attention of Elon Musk. Her and Musk are pretty good friends.
And she also loves Lord of the Rings. Massive Lord of the Rings fan. So that makes her kind of cool.
She's a big fan of the Orange Man as well. And this is our friends from the Babylon Bee. San Francisco's protesters spell out "No King" with sidewalk poop.
And the upside down U.S. flag as well.
There you go. What you can do with poop on the sidewalk. And then here, we talked about this earlier, and here's Mark Carney auditioning for the next Homer Simpson remake.
It really does look like that, doesn't it? It's not a good angle.
No, there you go. And then Jagmeet, whenever
and he does that as well, doesn't he? All the time. It's a shame that he wasn't doing that.
I think he represents the character. Like, he definitely is playing the role. Well, and why not? Mr. Burns, the man of power, actually, in Homer Simpson. Mr. Burns ran the nuclear power plant in know the name of the town?
Springfield.
Springfield, there you go.
But who's Waylon Smithers? Who's his little servant that loves him? I guess it's Dominic LeBlanc, maybe, for Carney.
Oh, I would say it'd have to be not gender based. It would have to be Chrystia Freeland.
Yeah, maybe. Although she's a bit more like the crazy cat lady in The Simpsons, I would say.
There you go. Who's Homer in this scenario, I guess, is the real question.
Who would be Homer? I guess it's got to be Doug Ford, hasn't it?
I'd say that. Yeah, it's a good call. There we go. And I would say Bart has to be Pierre Poilievre. There you go.
Yeah, that could work. Or
then,
comic book guy, maybe.
Yeah, and then here we go. Jagmeet Singh, they're getting busted at the concert there. Whenever I'm in danger of being assassinated, I go to a rap concert. And Drake called him out as a goof. There you go. Jagmeet and Justin.
Indeed.
Maybe they're going to that because wasn't that Justin at the Taylor Swift concert? They're handing out friendship bracelets to 15-year-old girls. Somebody else would have found that creepy.
He was doing the dancing as well, wasn't he?
If I did that, handing out bracelets to 15-year-old girls, I would be expecting the cops to be knocking on my door.
I think he was receiving them as well, wasn't he? Because he had loads on his arm.
Definitely, he was being the guy in the moment.
I think he just loves to be that. He loves to be the sort of celebrity, doesn't he? And he couldn't resist.
And then in the BC thing, do stupid stuff and win stupid prizes. Look at this. British Columbians get this now. You get a half stall door in public washrooms so that
a saloon. It's literally a saloon door on a toilet.
Everybody can see you doing your business. That's what you do. Stupid things. You have all these free drugs for everyone, and this is what you get. Everybody gets. To expose themselves when they go to the washroom. Who doesn't like that?
That's terrible. I mean, isn't that ridiculous as well? Because they, at the same time, the same people that put things like that in, that create things like that, will almost certainly be the same people that talk about mental health and how it's important to preserve people's mental health and all the rest of it. Like, loads of people feel insecure about going to public bathrooms, don't they? I mean, and women as well, not just men. And then they do that. So it's like you're screwing over their mental health there a bit, aren't you?
Many men have what you call a urinal freeze up too when somebody else shows up. Like, I don't know if you experience that at all. Like, when somebody comes and pulls, like say you're in the airport or something and there's like 12 urinals there. I think in English we call them urinals. There's 12 and then you're there and then the guy comes right and stands next to you. You're just like, what's wrong with the other? 11.
That's a frightening experience, really, isn't it? In any context, somebody just comes and stands next to you for no reason.
What's wrong with the other 11? Do you know what I mean? I don't know.
Indeed.
So
but I just think, what's wrong with letting people, drop a log in peace here? It's like it's a little bit intrusive.
Again, do stupid things, win stupid prizes, and Elon Musk, no stranger to the meme. Look, he's doing more memes now than he has been with political posts. I did watch him on an interview, and he said, and this had to do with AI. They asked him why he left Doge and stuff like that. He said, well, it's like, picking up needles on the beach. There's a very few needles to pick up on the beach. And there's a tsunami wave of AI coming. What do you do? Continue to pick up the needles or worry about the tsunami?
Yeah.
This one, the Wall Street Journal. He added an @ sign there. We suck at journalism.
They really hate the Wall Street Journal, don't they? The MAGA people. I guess that's because the Wall Street Journal is traditionally associated with the part of like the Reaganite bit of the Republican Party, who the MAGA people are kind of at war with. So that would be why, I imagine, because they seem to hate the Wall Street Journal more than they hate the New York Times.
Yeah. And then I put this here because it's just ludicrous here. We're going to play a small clip from the guy that calls us immoral, Stephen Guilbeault. Even though he calls us immoral, we'll still give him some airtime here.
Proud to officially announce the launch of the Canada Strong Pass, opening doors to experience Canada like never before. From museums and railroads to national parks and camping spots, our government is making it easier for families to choose Canada as they make their summer plans and to enjoy the places and experiences that brings us together and make Canada strong. From June 20.
I thought last year you weren't even supposed to go on a holiday because the planet was burning down. And now you can enjoy a holiday and get a free pass for your kids to, some national museums and parks and via rail. But
as long as you use fresh Canadian gasoline. Maybe that's the next thing.
And you know what? This bill that he had to actually read that off. He had to read that little clip there. Like another this is basically the taco and tinsel thing. So I mean, that, to me, that's why I put it in. Are you serious? This is what you're offering Canadians?
It's like they must have sat around in a room and said, how can we put another sort of bullet in this chamber, anti-Trump, pro-Canada, but without it really costing any money or really being anything at all? And then obviously somebody, possibly Guilbeault himself, said, why don't we just do this time?
I think
this is a good idea. It's not going to be hard. It's not going to cost us anything.
I reframe it differently. I'd say, like, let's test how stupid the Canadian people really are. They want a better economy. Let's test them and see if they really want a better economy or if they just want another taco and tinsel break here, and we'll give them this instead.
While we give Trump like tens of billions of dollars or something for the Golden Dome, and then they won't notice that.
And then this last meme here. I don't know if we have it. Do we have? Yeah, we do. There you go. This last meme here, because the French cut out at the air show there, they cut out the participation of the Israeli defense industry, and they said, "Well, you can just watch our demonstration live in Tehran."
It's a little bit
cheeky.
Yeah, but potentially a little bit dark.
And then you added something here, and.
Yeah, this is from the Fraser Institute, and it's a guy who does this all the time, Kenneth P. Green, PhD, who's a senior fellow at the Fraser Institute. He does a lot of these studies on climate change. And I just thought it was interesting because the summary here is there are 4 climate fallacies. Number 1 is, the fallacy is that capitalism causes climate change. And he points out quite obviously that the more economically free and wealthy a country is, usually, the better they are at managing their environment. I mean, everybody should know that, but I don't think everybody does know that. Like, the most polluting kinds of fuels are the ones that they tend to use in the poorest countries. Things like coal and even dung. In parts of Africa, they burn dung, which is obviously very inefficient and also is quite damaging to the environment. And obviously in places like Africa, where they go off and like kill endangered species and things like that, and elephants or whatever, that doesn't tend to happen in richer countries because obviously you don't need to kill an animal to buy food as they do in poorer parts of the world. But this one in particular, number 2 here, the fallacy that small emitting countries can do their part to fight climate change. And then he just highlights the obvious, which is that even if Canada reduced greenhouse gas emissions to 0, it wouldn't make any effect. To me, that's the most important fact in the climate change debate in Canada, is that there's nothing Canada can do about it. Or, well, there is theoretically. There's one thing Canada could do, and that is invent some technology that would change the way that we use energy around the world. That's about it. There's nothing that we can do in this country in terms of our emissions. And then there's one here about the EVs. That's the third fallacy, the idea that EVs are going to somehow like rescue the environment. Obviously, they're not. They come with they cause a lot of damage as well. And then this one, particularly relevant from Mr. Green here, which is that carbon capture and storage is a viable strategy to combat climate change. He says, while effective at a small scale, the benefits of carbon capture and storage to reduce global greenhouse gas emissions on a massive scale are limited and questionable. I just think that's interesting. It's a little dose of reality, and he's kind of written this in the style of Thomas Sowell, if you know him, the economist who used to like to write about economic fallacies. He wrote a book about economic fallacies, actually, and it was often along these lines. But this chap has decided to do it, but concentrated on I guess you would call it environmentalism or something like that. It's just rather intriguing.
There he goes, poo-pooing all over Bill Gates' next business venture, carbon capture.
Well, look, if Bill Gates with his $200 billion or whatever, if he put all that money into designing a technology that would, clean the atmosphere through so that we could still consume at the same rate, but we could do it cleanly, that would make sense, wouldn't it? But this idea that carbon capture just seems, it's kind of, it's just a bit foolish, really, isn't it? Especially on, like, as Mr. Green says, on a massive scale, it's just kind of crazy. If you were trying to capture all the carbon in China and places like that, I mean, it's just ludicrous, isn't it?
Fool of the day.
Fool of the day. Who are we going to have?
Well, I got my mind.
To be honest, I mean, slightly controversial, maybe. but I'm going to say Mark Carney is my fool of the day for the way that he's salivated over Donald Trump's existence.
I think that's a solid pick, but I was going to go with David Eby there with the elbows up comment there. Well, he gives the money away to the Chinese CCP and helps them build their own naval armada, funding that.
Yeah.
So there you go.
And, I mean, in so many ways, one of the stupidest decisions of the last, I don't know how long. We're talking a lot of years here.
I think that's going to go down as one of the definitely the scandal of the year for the BC NDP, and they're going to have to walk that back. I don't know if they're going to have much choice. The pressure continues to mount, and little old us is going to mount some of that pressure as well because we think it's absolutely ridiculous. So, but you know,
just
Mark
makes
Carney,
no sense. You can't talk tough on economic sovereignty and buying Canada first, and also talk tough about authoritarian regimes, and then give billion-dollar contracts to, you know, the world's biggest authoritarian regime. You just can't do that. Can't get away with that.
I'm gonna give in to you on that one because I think Mark Carney on the national stage instead of just the provincial stage talked such a tough rhetoric against Trump, and definitely showed no rhetoric, tough talk in person with him, and he definitely earned the title for us for today, for the fool of the day.
It's not even that. It's the precise opposite. He seemed to resemble somebody that admired and worshipped Donald Trump, which is ironic because that's what he said was true of Pierre Poilievre. He said Poilievre, what was it, that he looked up to him or something, or wants to be him and admires him and all the rest of it. Even though Poilievre's never given the slightest hint that that's true.
Poilievre would serve up Canada on a platter to Trump. If that resource deal turns out to be true, he might have been talking about himself the whole time.
The things you can do in politics, eh? There are no rules in politics, really. There's no principles anyway. You can just kind of do what you want.
And the things we can do, streaming here. And if you like what we do and you support it, we'd love you to like, share, and click the like button, hit that heart button, hit whatever buttons there is there. Hit some buttons, make some comments.
Even the down. Give us the down.
Even the down. But you know, like if
or maybe don't do that.
if you think that Ian was the fool of the day because his tough talk against Donald Trump's height, you know, definitely give him a vote there as well. And but he is the sharpest match in the box. So there you go. I'll leave you with that. And we're back tomorrow morning. Today is what? Tuesday, June 17th, all day. And so coming up on summer. There you go. And,
yeah, very soon.
We'll see you tomorrow. I really appreciate the regulars that come back every morning. We really, really appreciate that. And we look forward to chatting with you tomorrow. Cheers for now. And we'll see you tomorrow.
We don't just report the news. We live here too. We're your neighbors, bringing you stories that matter to all of us. No government funding, no outside influence.